The Department of Basic Education has blamed the slow rollout of appropriate and safe infrastructure on the building industry's inability to move with greater speed, setting 2025 as the new deadline for the eradication of pit toilets in the country. Meanwhile, Section 27 has commemorated the death of Michael Komape in the Human Rights Month by launching the Michael Komape Sanitation Progress Monitor. This is an accountability tool that tracks progress made by the Limpopo Department of Education on eliminating unsafe and undignified sanitation, including pit toilets in Limpopo's public schools, and installing safe and decent ones. The deaths of Michael Komape, as well as 5-year-old Lumka Mketwa and 3-year-old Langalam, whose bodies were found lying in pit toilets in the Eastern Cape, have been viewed as human rights violations and reminders of how these communities have been failed by the government. Well, Senior Communications Officer at Section 27, Pearl Nicodemus, joins us now to talk about this story. Pearl, thank you. Thanks very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you for having me.
I mean, Section 27 has been championing the Michael Komape case for years now. And the organization, as I mentioned in the introduction, launching the Michael Komape Sanitation Progress Monitor. How exactly is this going to work?
So the Progress Monitor is a tool on the website of Section 27. So what it does is, in 2021, the Limpopo High Court handed out a judgment to the Department of Education in Limpopo to say that, and ordered them to give us a list of all pit toilets and plans and a budget to say, how are you going to eradicate this? How are you going to eradicate pit toilets in the province? In December 2021, they handed us the list and their plans and budget to say, this is how we're going to do it. And so what we did is we took this data and we made it consumable and user-friendly, because we want society to join us in holding the department accountable. As you've said, we've started this journey with the Komape family years ago. It has been years of journeying and years of rounds of litigation trying to get the department to cooperate. And so this is yet another step in, 1, accountability, and 2, transparency, making this information accessible. So what you can basically do on the site is type the name of a school, because the department has given us the list of schools, and check the progress, because one of their deadlines, for example, and we've got a countdown clock on the website. If you go to section27.org.za, they've got about 2 days left. They've set a deadline of the 31st of March to say that they would have eradicated what they call priority 1 schools. That's schools that exclusively rely on pit toilets or don't have sanitation at all. So that's, I think, the gist of sort of why we did it and how it works.
Yeah, and yet the Department of Education are just saying that they need more time, that they won't meet that deadline. So give us an update in terms of how far we are. You know, we know Michael Komape and many before him, but obviously Michael is the one we look to, because that's who we talk about. I mean, this was many years ago. I mean, I think it was in 2014, was that when?
14.
Yeah, that happened in 2014. Up to now, 2023, how have we done? How have schools, and whether we talk Limpopo or the entire nation, how have we done when it comes to eradicating pit toilets?
So Section 27 has been working in Limpopo because the court order, constricted us. That's where our case was, and that's where our client was. And so after, a few rounds of going back and forth to court, trying to get the department to commit to eradicating pit toilets, there has been some progress. There are schools that have been provided with mobile toilets, for example. And there are some cases, and we'll see the numbers on the website, where pit toilets have been eradicated, but we're saying that the progress is not fast enough. For example, as we stand, there are 210 schools that still have pit toilets in Limpopo, that rely exclusively on pit toilets, that need to be eradicated by the 31st of March, by the department's own deadline. And this impacts around close to 66,000 learners as it stands. And so there has been some movement, but the reason why we created this tool is because we're saying the movement is not fast enough. And also we've just seen that, there's been a challenge, I guess, of will really from the department. And that's why I was saying we're calling on the public, we're calling on learners, we're calling on everyone who is invested, we're calling on the country to say, let us collectively hold the department accountable. Let us look at this data, let us look at what they promise, and then hold them accountable. And we're hoping that the media will join us as well, because what you can find on this website is schools, you can find the condition they're in, you can source so much information from that, and ask the department questions that need to be asked. And when they give us numbers and deadlines, we then have at least information to verify. We then have at least a means to say, but you said this on such and such a date.
Yeah, I'm busy looking at your website at the moment, and yeah, it is. I mean, the moment you open it, the very first thing that you're confronted with are pictures of these pit latrines, and take the safety aspect out of it, because the safety aspect obviously is the biggest aspect, because so many young children lose their lives while using these pit latrines. But you look at this and you think to yourself, this is unhygienic. The whole issue of dignity and hygiene and anything that goes along with this is taken away when you see these young children having to go and use this in so many schools around the country. I mean, we talk about the deaths of young children. I mean, this story out of the Eastern Cape, where Langalam Vicky, 3-year-old, I mean, this is where Eastern Cape schools, where she was found in a pit toilet at the Glen Grey Primary School, and this happened earlier this month, as well as 5-year-old Lumka Mketwa, who was found lying in a pit toilet at Luna Primary School. This was in 2018. They said that proper toilets had been installed, but the pit latrines where the pupils drowned had not been destroyed. This does not make any sense to me. I know that the DA also visited the Langalam Vicky school, and they said that the only toilet found in the school was a pit latrine. Which is the correct version of events? What actually have you discovered?
So we're with the case of Langalam, Vicky, one, it's another death too many. It's an unfortunate story again. As Section 27, we've not done work at the Eastern Cape, so we're waiting for the report. So at the moment, we're not able to speak or even verify the information or speak to the facts of what happened. But again, we do speak about Langalam because it's a death that was unavoidable and was not meant to happen. And so we've heard some variations from the department, variations from the DA, but as Section 27 at the moment, we're waiting for a full report. But what we can stand by is saying that the issue of pit toilets is a crisis, irrespective of the potential facts at the moment. We can just speak from the research and the work that we've done just in Limpopo to say that, this is a human rights violation. This should not have happened, but we are waiting to hear facts about what happened in the Eastern Cape.
So I want to look back a little bit at the path that government has come on. So in 2013, the department adopted the minimum uniform norms and standards for public school infrastructure. And in this particular document, pit toilets were banned at schools. And of course, this is a legally binding document for the department and provincial departments to eradicate them in schools. In 2018, the court had to interpret the state's duties in addressing the crisis condition of South African schools. However, the department has missed several of its deadlines. And instead, organizations such as yourself, civil society organizations, have to force the government to provide such a basic need. I mean, I'm even looking that you are being assisted by the European Union Commission. This worries. It is very, very worrisome that the government cannot deliver on something so essential and basic for our children, such as eradicating pit latrines. How should the government or the minister be held accountable for what's going on?
Leanne, that's that question of accountability is a conversation that we have far too often. And like you're saying, organizations such as Section 27, Equal Education have been involved in the fight to get the government or departments, to honor their constitutional obligations. The reason why, like you're saying, civil society is fighting the fights that is fighting is we're using the means that we have. We're using legal avenues to try and hold the government accountable. But I think the question of accountability is such a big question, and it's a question that we have conversations about, but also should be placed to the department to say what accountability measures are there in place. For example, in situations where provincial departments are underspending, returning hundreds of millions, of money that should be spent in infrastructure. Questions I think we've posed to Treasury recently is what are the accountability measures, apart from saying that we're going to redistribute this money. But what measures are there in place before we get to a place where, it's the end of a financial season and the money is not spent? And so I think these are tough questions that government, we should be placing, at the feet of government to saying that you're reporting these things, you're missing deadlines, but what accountability measures are there? Because we're playing the bit that we can by using the law as an avenue. And even in that situation, as Section 27, litigation is our last resort. We actually don't want to go to court because it's an expensive exercise. It's lengthy. It's time. It's the money that we spent can be spent doing the actual job, right? But we are forced to resort to these means because there just are no accountability means and measures.
And this is a major problem. And now you've got the DA also jumping into it. I know that they visited the school, as I mentioned, where young little Vicky died, and they're also starting court action against this, which, you wouldn't think it would land up in a court of law, because at the end of the day, I mean, the amount of money that, as you say, is being spent on litigation fees and all of these campaigns could be used to build toilets. And this is the reality that we live with. But, we look at something like the Minister, Angie Motshekga, setting the deadline starting from 2025 for that eradication. I mean, is this feasible? There are a lot of schools that still have these pit latrines. This deadline, do you think it will be met, or do you think we're going to be moving that once again? Looks like we may have lost our connection. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
To be honest,
are you back? We lost you for a bit.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Just quickly, that last question in terms of, do you think we're going to reach that 2025 deadline? Can we trust what the department is saying? Or after all we've heard from them, their broken promises previously, is this just another one?
With the numbers that the minister gave, there is a bit of a discrepancy. But as to whether we'll meet the deadline or not, just using Limpopo as a sample and the rate at which they're going, there's 210 schools to go to their own deadlines. I don't know what the minister based that on, and just on the rate that they've delivered, or at least Limpopo has delivered, it doesn't sound feasible. But obviously, as a department, we would love for it to happen. But it's just, I would have to know a bit more about what the department based that on, because Limpopo, for example, has its final deadline at around 2029. To eradicate all the toilets, priority 3. So if Limpopo has 2029, and the minister is saying that 2025 nationally, it's a tough one to reconcile. But I guess we will have to wait and see.
All right, Pearl, thank you. Listen, thanks to you and Section 27 for the work that you are doing. Go and visit the website, have a look, and it really just paints that picture of exactly what is happening around the country when it comes to pit latrines. It gives you the numbers, it gives you what is needed, how you can help, all of these kind of things. So perhaps it's time for us to get involved and try and assist and help where we can. Pearl Nicodemus is a Senior Communications Officer at Section 27, discussing the grim situation of pit latrines in the country.